3 o'clock in the morning, my wife said, "Doug, we don't have any water." And I went in and I checked it, and we didn't have any water. We live in a big school building, so there is a chance that it could freeze, but when I turned it on, all that came out was air. So I thought, well, it probably didn't freeze. It probably was a water main break, and that's what it was. We went down the hill to come to church, and they were still working on it down at the bottom of the hill. I'll fall asleep with the rest of you guys, okay? That's what I'll do, okay? So when I fall asleep, then the sermon's over, okay? Our text this morning is going to be found in Proverbs chapter 7 and also through chapter 8:6. So I'm going to cover 7:6 and 8:6 is what I want to cover. I'm going to tell you a little story this morning. On New Year's Day in 1929, Georgia Tech played UCLA in the Rose Bowl. In that game, a young man named Roy Riegels recovered a fumble for UCLA, picking up the loose ball, and he ran 65 yards towards the goal line. Unfortunately, he had gotten confused. It was the wrong goal line. One of his teammates, Betty Loam, ran him down and tackled him just before he scored for the opposing team. Several plays later, UCLA had to punt. Georgia Tech blocked the kick and scored a safety, further demoralizing the UCLA team. From that day on, Roy Riegels was branded Wrong Way Riegels. This morning, the title of my sermon is The Wrong Way. And the reason I titled it that is because we're embarking on a new year. We're embarking on a new beginning that we could have if we want to, and make it better than the year before as far as our Christian lives. But there are many people that are going the wrong way in their lives. They go the wrong way because they have lost sight of any kind of a goal. They have no goals. They don't know where they're going. They just wander through life expecting that everything will turn out all right. And that's kind of the picture that we see here in Proverbs. Solomon is just sitting on his porch, and he's watching a young man wander down the street. And I'm going to start in chapter 7 with verse 7. "And saw among the simple, I perceived among the youth, a young man devoid of understanding, passing along the street near her corner, and he took the path to her house." The picture we see here is a picture of a boy just wandering along, not knowing where he's going, not caring where he's at. The boy doesn't seem to care about where he's going to end up. There's no specific direction, none at all. He's just wandering along the road at twilight. It's getting dark. He seems to be just killing time. He's out taking in the sights of the city because he's got nothing better to do. But he's in the wrong part of town at the wrong time of the day, and he meets up with the wrong kind of a woman. She comes out to meet him. She's good looking. She's interested in him. She makes him feel good about himself. And since this young man has nothing better to do with his time, he goes home with her, and he spends time with an adulterous woman. And as we continue on, chapter 7, 22 through 23, immediately at once he went after her, as an ox goes to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stalks, till an arrow strikes his liver. As a bird hastens to the snare, he did not know it would cost him his life. In other words, he would live to be very regretful for the decision that he made. But how did he end up in such a dangerous arrangement? Well, because Solomon tells us he was devoid of understanding, or he lacked good judgment. I read a story a while back about a few Indiana Pacer players who got into trouble at a bar in Indianapolis. They were at the 8 Second Saloon in downtown Indy at 2:15 in the morning when a fight broke out. Some people say the Pacers were in the middle of it. The Pacers said they had nothing to do with it. But one commentator noted that nothing good can ever come out of being out in a bar at 2:15 in the morning. These guys, if they had wanted to avoid getting into trouble, they should have been home in bed. But like the foolish young man in Proverbs, they were in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong kind of people. Proverbs 7 is a lesson Solomon is sharing with his sons. He's telling them this story because he wants to drive home a special insight into life. But with that lesson, that's what Solomon had in mind, to let his kids to know that they shouldn't turn out like the foolish boy, meandering down the street and being distracted by a harlot. When he told this story, he wanted his sons to understand the value of knowing where they were and who they were with. Solomon paints the picture of the foolish boy being seduced by a loose woman, and the reason he is so easily swayed into her bedroom is because this fellow doesn't seem to care where he is or who he's with. Being in the wrong place at the wrong time. When I was 16 years old, I was pumping gas at an Esso station in New Brighton, Pennsylvania. The station closed at 10, and I was the guy that was closing, so I had to count the money. It closed at 9, so I was inside with the door locked, counting the money, getting it ready to go, take it to the night depository to put it in. And my buddies pulled in. They said, "Hey, let's take a ride. We'll go get something to eat." So I said, "Okay, jump in my car because I got to go put this money in the bank." So there we are going down the road. We go into Rochester, Pennsylvania, make a right on the street to go down to where we're going to eat. And I'm driving down the street. I'm about halfway down, and a National Guard truck comes across the street and blocks it off. I look in my rearview mirror. A National Guard truck comes in and blocks that end off. They jump out of the truck, all the men come running to the car, out of the car, lay us on the ground, searched us, searched the car, and then the captain came to me and said, "You were the driver, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You know why we did this?" And I said, "No." Well, back in the 60s, there was a period where there was a very bad racial unrest. And Rochester, Pennsylvania took a big blow on that, and there was a 10 o'clock curfew for that city. So me and my buddies pulled into the city, went down the street, and sure enough, so he put us back in the car, and he says, "Now we're going to escort you and your buddies here in the car, and don't come back into the city tonight. You're not allowed in here." That was the story of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And being 16 years old and seeing 20 or 30 National Guard with M16 rifles coming towards you is not a very pleasant thing. Same thing with this boy. He just knew that he didn't even know that he was in the wrong place. We didn't know we were in the wrong place. Solomon's stories here is he's trying to compare that situation with what he's going to say to his boys here in the 8th chapter. He's trying to let them know that this is the wrong way, this is the wrong place, this is the wrong people to be with, but I'm going to tell you now what to do. And in Proverbs 8, 1 through 6, it reads, "Does not wisdom cry out and understanding lift her voice? She takes her stand on the top of the high hill beside the way where the path meets. She cries out by the gates at the entry of the city. At the entrance of the doors, to you, O man, I call, and my voice is to the sons of men. O you simple ones, understand prudence, and you fools, be of an understanding heart. Listen, for I will speak of excellent things, and from the opening of my lips will come right things. The foolish man meanders along in places he doesn't belong, in places he shouldn't be, because he has no specific direction. He wanders as if he's lost. By contrast, the wise man has a specific destination. He's going to go somewhere. And he's going to, instead of ending up in the harlot's bedroom, he's going to pursue a different kind of woman. He has a destination. He has a direction he wants to go. When we're trying to reach a destination, if you're trying to go to Florida, and you jump in your car and you drive north, guess what? You're not going to make it to Florida. We have to know where we're going, and we have to know how to get there. That makes sense, doesn't it? We understand that in driving, the direction we are going determines the destination we will arrive at. The direction we travel is going to get us to that place where we want to go. Now, if that's true when I'm driving my car, or I'm taking a hike, or I'm riding my bike, it's certainly true on how I live my life. If I want to get somewhere with my life, I had better have a direction in mind. So the first question we have to ask ourselves is this: where should we want to go? I'll give you my answer later. Too many people do not know where they're going. They're like this foolish young man. They have no destination for their lives, and so one day they end up going someplace they're going to regret. And Solomon is telling his sons in a kind of a poetry kind of a way, but he's telling them that you have to seek out good in order to find it. And don't do what this young man is doing. Don't live your life aimlessly with this coming new year. We need to decide where we want to go. Know where you're going and do what it takes to get there. Think about it for a minute. If you have children, you'd like to leave them something when you die, if possible. But Solomon isn't concerned with wealth or finance for his children. You can be financially sound, but still not have a real destination for your life. Financially secured people still need a destination that will really make a difference in their lives. They need to avoid wandering off into harmful lifestyles. I have my destination picked out. You don't have to go with me if you don't want. And I can't make you go. But I'm headed for heaven. That's where I want to go. I'm headed for heaven. I'll try my best to take you with me. Excuse me, but the ultimate decision is going to be yours. So what destination should you choose? I just told you my choice, heaven. Where do you want to go? Well, if you're here this morning, that means that you are a little step closer to being in the right place as far as making it to heaven. You're somewhere where God wants you to be. And God has good news for you. He knows the direction you should take in your life. Thus, if you want the best destination for your life, you should build that destination around God. Now, how's that work? Well, Solomon started out by talking to his sons about relationships. Solomon tells about this young man who wanders down by the home of an adulterous woman. He establishes a relationship with this loose woman, and there's some reasons he did that. She complimented him. She wanted to do things for him. She made him feel like a man. She was attracted to him. It seemed to him as if he had been destined to enjoy her company and receive her blessings. And if you ask him, he might even tell you that he felt like God wanted him in that relationship. He may even start telling you the good things about her and the relationship that they have. That's often what adulterous people will do. They'll say they felt their love for each other was ordained or fated. They were fated to be together. It was fate that brought them together. But of course, we know that's all a lie. Because these people just stumble into relationships, and it's usually dictated more by their own lust and selfishness than by any involvement of God. And they stumble into these immoral relationships because they didn't start out by being concerned with what God wanted for their lives. They made snap decisions without even asking God of His opinion or even reading His Word to ask what He had to say about what was going on. Solomon tells them that God's wisdom is like the second part of the story that I read, that she's on a high place. She's in a high place. And he's telling them that God's wisdom is easy to find if you bother looking for it. But if you don't bother looking for it, you're not going to find it. In James, it tells us that all we have to do is ask. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. Look to this new year. Ask God for his insight into your lives, and you will gain the wisdom necessary to plan that life properly. In the same way, you cannot arrive at your life's purpose by starting with a focus on yourself. We have to give all that we have, which includes ourselves, to God. We have to do that. You must begin with God, your Creator. You're existing only because God wills that you exist. The key point here is, as Christians, we know God has a destination for us, and it's heaven. And we know that if we set our hearts on that destination, if we forge forward to that direction, ignoring anything that gets in the way, that we will obtain the best God could give us. That's why Paul wrote in Philippians 3:13, "Brethren, I do not count myself to have apprehended, but one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind me, and reaching forward to those things which are ahead." And as I sat at my desk and I read those words, I thought to myself, here's a man that murdered Christians. Went around murdering Christians, but yet he's saying to himself, I have to forget about what I did in the past. Murder's up here, white lies are down here, right? Isn't that the human way? And that's what Paul's saying is, no matter what I did in my past, I can be forgiven of it, no matter what it was. Paul was convinced also that nothing in this life compares for what God has in store for us later. When you have such a destination set in your mind, you'll just naturally begin to prune away every relationship or activity that hindered or bogged down your commitment to that goal. Friends. Your friends are going to dictate to you, if you let them, how you're going to act and what you're going to do. I got in trouble with my friends many a time. Sometimes it was my fault. Sometimes it was their fault. But the idea is, if you hang out with the wrong people, you're going to end up in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you're going to regret it. The last thing I want to mention today is these fundamental questions. What if I've made bad decisions in my life? What if I haven't included God in my plans? What if I've messed things up so badly that there doesn't seem to be any way of fixing them? All through the Bible, we're told that God is the God of new beginnings. He's the God of do-overs. Now, it's not going to be, I'm not saying there that it's willful sin, but I'm saying that when you fall and make a mistake, you ask God and He'll forgive you. He takes our failures and our faults and removes them, replacing them with a new clean slate. And then God takes that clean slate and builds a destiny in our lives. Wrong Way Regals had failed his team. They went into the locker room with an 8-point deficit. Coach Price looked at the team and said, "Men, the same team that played the first half will start the second." The players got up and started out, all but Regals. He didn't budge. The coach looked back and called to him, "Regals." He didn't move. Coach Price went over to where Regals sat and said, "Roy, didn't you hear me? The same team that played the first half will start the second half." Roy Regals looked up to him, his cheeks wet with tears. "Coach," he said, "I can't do it. I've ruined myself. I can't face the crowd out there." Coach Price reached out, put his hand on his shoulder, and said, "Roy, get back out there. The game is only half over." Nearly 63 years later, Roy Riegels, past the time that he scooped up that Georgia Tech fumble and spun around and ran 65 yards towards his own goal line. But that run by the California center, who became known as Wrong Way Riegels, remains the single most famous or infamous play in the Rose Bowl history. Riegels was 83 years old and afflicted with Parkinson's disease, but was on hand when he and 9 other college football personalities were inducted into the Rose Bowl Hall of Fame. And his son said, "This is the great day for my dad." His son was a Sacramento attorney who accepted the Hall of Fame trophy as his father sat nearby in a wheelchair. "I haven't seen him this excited in years. He has a great deal of difficulty talking, and he doesn't remember a lot of things, but he really looked forward to coming back to Pasadena again for this day." Although the majority of those at the ceremony weren't even born when Riegels ran the wrong way and led UCLA to an 8-7 loss to Georgia Tech on January 1st, 1929. They gave the Golden Bear captain as loud a cheer of appreciation as the others received. Let's look at this year, this new year, as a new beginning. Let's rededicate ourselves to God and His work. Let's not go the wrong way. And if we do, we know and have the confidence in God, at least I do, that He will give us a do-over if we need it. As I was thinking about this, I was thinking about a story that I heard. It's about put yourself in this situation. You have a son, he's born, and he's growing older and older, but he's not learning anything. He can't learn. Learning disability, can't learn. He turns 5, he still can't learn, can't talk, can't even walk. Is that the way God is looking at some of us as far as our Christianity is concerned? Is He saying, you've been a Christian for this long, but you're still in the same spot you were in when you come up out of the water of baptism? God wants us to concentrate on making things better, making ourselves better. I'm speaking to myself here, believe me. Every time I sit down at my desk to study, I ask God to give me wisdom. But I also thank God that He led my life the way that He led it. And it wasn't miraculous. It wasn't some miraculous thing that I found the right woman to marry and that she put up with me for 44 years. I believe that that was in God's plan. But it was because that I was looking and I was seeking that. I came here, believe it or not, about 6 years ago, and I've been preaching here. We're going on the 4th year now. Or maybe it is the 4th year. I don't know, I have to look at my calendar. But I just want to thank the congregation this morning for putting up with me, because I try to improve as much as I can. I really work on my preaching, and I really work on my studying, and I try to improve. And I really love the way that people encourage me here, because you've made me hopefully blossom and made me better. Here on the last slide is God's plan of salvation. I want to thank the congregation for everything they've done for me, but if there's anybody here that needs to use this plan of salvation to come to God and be baptized, we can do that for you. Or if you're embarking on this new year and you want to make it a new beginning and you've done some things that you shouldn't have done and you need forgiveness, we can pray for you here. Please come as we stand and sing.
Jesus is tenderly
calling to